I'm Pastor Jake. I hope everybody's having a great weekend and hope everybody has a blessed week. You know, we always want to be out there praying for people. So if you have prayers, please comment down below and leave a prayer and we'll be praying for you. You know, in this life, there's going to be struggles. You're going to meet people that are going to hold stuff against you. This world does this. This world is a never-ending, relentless place. It wants to hold everything against you. There is no forgiveness anymore. We see this. You know, people's hearts have changed. I've seen things where happened where, you know, something in the span of 20 years, and there's still hard feelings against someone. God says, if you can't forgive them, He can't forgive you. But we do this all the time. We hold stuff. You know, there's a thing in my life that I had where people said something that was very rude. You know, yes, I had done things in my lifetime. But the thing about it is, I'm moving on. I'm not looking back. I'm not trying to keep going the same direction. But the thing about it is, what God had told me that at this time was that you need to forgive. And I was like, you know, well, God, you know, and this is when Peter asked the same question. Well, how many times should I forgive? And Jesus tells him 7 times 70. In other words, always forgive. John, 1 John, all of Matthew, all say the same thing. If you can't forgive somebody, God can't forgive you, no matter what they've done to you. And I know this feeling because I've had a lot of things. I've had people say rude things about me. Some were true. Some were hurtful. Some were just washed off the back. You know, it just didn't bother me. But the thing about it is, God told me to forgive them. God told me to let them go. Just let it go. Don't hold a grudge. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 4 through 5 says, but God, who is rich in mercy. See that word mercy. Now, I'm going to look it up real quick. That's the good thing about how I'm doing this is I can look it up right here. Is the compassionate, benevolent, loving kindness that God shows to humanity, particularly by withholding deserved punishment and offering forgiveness. How about that? Withholding punishment. We deserve everything. You know, that's the thing here. Here's the one thing you're going to learn in being a Christian. You'll never feel like you deserve it. And you will put yourself down as many times as you can. Your heart will tell you that, you know, God deserves better. And He does. I'll be honest with you. I look at my past and I'm thinking, you know, God deserves better than me. But God didn't choose someone else. He chose me. He chose other people, but I'm saying He chose me. He said He knew me from the womb. Before I was born, He knew who I was. He knew what I was going to do, and He still chose me. Just like the disciples. You look at all of them, they all had bad quirks. You know, Peter denied Christ. You know, Jesus had to go out on the shore and call him in from a boat because he went fishing. Peter was worried about other disciples. Jesus said, don't worry about them. Stay focused on what I got for you. You know, He did a lot of things. And it just wasn't just Peter, it was all of them. You know, Thomas, all of them said things and done things and didn't understand. Not until the end, till the grace of God. That word grace. Grace and mercy. That is the thing that we have to. Grace is unmerited favor and kindness. In other words, we cannot earn it. I've heard this a million times between people. Well, we got to work to do this, work to that. I said, then what's God doing? Well, it's better that we work. Yes. James said it like this. You will know my works by my faith. In other words, you're having faith in God, doing what you need to do, and you're helping people because that's where your faith is at. You know, that's why I always get mad when somebody talks about, because, you know, the newer Bibles from the 80s, that when they do translations, I guess you could say, they turned around and they took out charity and put in love. The thing about it is I like the word charity because it means an action of doing something. It's an action from the heart. It's not just saying, oh, I love you, you know, because how many times, and I asked this before to a congregation, how many times you told somebody you love them that you're no longer in their life? Or they told you they loved you and they're no longer in your life. But here's the thing it is your actions of love, your charity. You know, that unmerited. In other words, you cannot earn it. There is no, all you have to do is have faith and love in God. To know that He is your creator. He is your Father. See, there's a thing that a lot of people don't understand about this amazing grace and mercy, is that God is your Father. And like He says, no father would give you something that, you know, bad. You know, that's one thing we always think about. God's just put too much on me. God doesn't put too much on you. What happens is we put the stuff on ourselves. It's just like cancer and all these other things that happen in our lives. Yes, they come upon everyone. Not everyone, but they come on people. And they think, well, God's doing this to me. He's punished me. No, God is not punishing you. Just like me and another friend of mine. He's been going through a lot of illness. But the thing about it was because he did things in his life. He drank too much or he smoked too much. He did things in his life that it took a toll on his body. Can God heal? Yes, He can. But sometimes, and I've watched people do it, you know, it's just like, you know, a great friend. He smoked. The doctor told him he had cancer. He didn't quit. He kept going on doing it. And it finally killed him. Why? Because he let it in his life. That's what I'm trying to say. We always want to blame God for everything. Well, God let this happen. God let this do this. The thing about it is, God didn't let this do this. We most of the time we let it through the doorway. You know, picture this. Satan is knocking at your door every second of the day. You have the right to tell him to go away. But sometimes we don't. We just open that door and let him just barge on in and destroy what he does. Most of the time he goes into our garbage, pours out in the middle of the floor, and tells us, look what you got. The thing about it is, God doesn't remember this garbage anymore. He doesn't remember your past because He says He will forgive you if you forgive others. That's what this is, that grace and mercy to forgive and love as we should be loving and forgiving. We should be asking every night, God, forgive me as you forgive others. Let me forgive as you forgive. Let me not remember it no more. Let me not be on my heart. I hear people say, well, I forgive them, but they still, because sometimes we don't put them, some people we don't remove them from our lives. What we do is we keep them in and close, and it causes bitterness in between. Should you be pushing them out? No. It's not about the pushing out. It's about, as God said, as the Word of God says, sometimes we need to admonish a person. In other words, let them know, hey, I just cannot be around you no more because it's causing bad feelings. Or you're doing something I do not approve of, and I cannot live like that. I have to live as God said. So sometimes we have to step back from people, even people we love. You know, there's a lot of people in my life I love a lot. I would do anything for, but I just cannot be around. It's not because I don't love them. It's because my heart needs that time off. It needs to step away from Him. You know, it's just like with God and disobedience. You know, God never He's still the same as yesterday, today, and tomorrow. He's still with you. He says that he will never forsake you nor leave you. But you can leave him. When you start being disobedient and not living as God told you to live. Jesus says, you are my friend as you do as I command. But we think, okay, well, we want to do what we want to do. And then when we get in trouble, God, why'd you let this happen? God says, I didn't let this happen. You did it. You're that kid in that candy store who decided to run after what he wanted instead of being patient. We need patience, we need forgiveness, we need grace, and we need mercy. Like I said, grace is that unmerited favor. In other words, it's a gift from God. You cannot repay it. You cannot, there's nothing on this earth you can do to repay it. You can try, but the thing about it is, it's where your heart is. See, that's another thing that gets a lot of people. Is people think, well, I can go do this today and that'll get me forgiveness. But that's not how it works. We shouldn't be trying something, even just like giving. You know, me and a gentleman talked one time, and he got real rude because he said, you know, tithing and offerings are not in the Bible. And I was like, what do you mean it's not in the Bible? And he said, well, it's not in the New Testament. I said, yeah, Jesus talks a lot about money. Matter about giving coins to certain servants, about the lady at the treasury. I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, the Old Testament. I said, well, the book is one book. And I'll be on this till the day I die. It's one book. It's not two books. It's one book. Now, I've talked about the Old Testament, New Testament. A testament means a new fact. It doesn't mean a new book. A new chapter in God's way of doing it. It's facts. That's what testament means. Look it up. And I said, well, it's all one book. If God seen tithing here and offerings, you know, your first fruits and all, you should be giving from the heart. Because I always tell people that. Don't give if it's not from the heart, because it ain't going to help you none. God will provide. That's what I always say, even for church, God provides for the church. He provides. If you're not going to give because your heart is so hard, then he'll send somebody else that will. Always has. I've seen churches, though, that will put themselves in the dirt. As a matter of fact, me and this guy was talking, and he said, well, I don't believe in it, and I've been preaching for 30 years. And I said, well, that's fine, but I believe in tithe and offerings and first fruits. I believe in God, the gifts of God. And when you don't do it, you're just kind of separating yourself. You're not doing it from the heart. You're not being graceful and merciful. You're not being anything, because it's a gift. When I give, it's a gift to God, because God has given me so much. But he didn't see it that way, and I asked him, I said, what church you still preach? He said, I don't. He said, our church closed. I said, yeah, probably because of funding, didn't it? And then he didn't say nothing else. Because he knew that he'd already lost. Because that's how giving, this is how God works. You look at Acts chapter, the first five chapters of Acts, talk about people giving and helping the church and building the church up. Why? Because it came from the heart. These people didn't just give because they were trying to buy their way into salvation. What they were doing was because they loved God so much, they just wanted to give God back some of what they were given. But you'll have people argue with you. They'll say, no, I've seen, because when I was first being a Christian and going through stuff, I would watch videos, and there was a lot of preachers that preached on, no, God doesn't want your offerings. No, he says that. He doesn't want you offering the sacrifices because it comes from a corrupt, hardened heart. When it should have come from the heart to give to God, to love. See, God is love. He is merciful. He is forgiveness. He is kindness. He is joy. He has all these good things. So why do we want to try to corrupt it with the world? And that's what we try to do. We try to corrupt it. We try to figure a way around it. We try to scheme our way into heaven. Jesus says that anybody comes over and not through over the wall instead of through the gate, which he is the gate, only one way, is a thief and a robber. That's he puts it plain and simple. There's no other way to God except through Jesus. And you cannot do it your way. I've tried to do it my way. And what I've found in life, I made a lot of bad errors. You know, it's when we start doing it God's way, when we start being truthful, when we start being honest, we start being loving, kind, careful, doing the things that God's attributes, things change. Now, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you can be as good as you want to be, but people are going to be them. The thing about it is, and this is coming from my heart, forgive them and let it go. Because in the end, you're going to be standing in front of God. Just you and God. You're either going to have Jesus beside you or not. It's not going to be about any person on this earth. No matter what they've done to you, what somebody has said to you, no matter how they've treated you, it's just going to be you and God. That's why you have to have that heart for God, that love for God. You know, Hebrews chapter 4, verse 16 says, "Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need." That mercy and that grace to help other people, to love other people, no matter what they've done to you, what they said to you. I remember a comment not too long ago was about, well, the people still are mean and nasty. They're always going to be mean and nasty because they're of the earth. They're of this world. This world hates you. I got to say it. This world hates you. Jesus said, this world will hate you because you love me. It hates the word of God. It hates Jesus. It hates God himself, this world does. The thing about it is, we're not of this world. This is only a moment in our life. Just think about this. In eternity, this is not even a second to our life. It's just a moment, just a season. There'll be more seasons and more time. Just like next year is another season, another time. Next 5 years, another season, another time. Something that happened today may never happen again. But the thing about it is that we don't worry about the past. We worry about the future. We keep going forward. We don't dwell on the past. We don't dwell on what people did to us. We forgive and forget. Because if we can't forgive and forget, like God says, he can't forgive and forget you. Forgive you, excuse me. We need to move forward. We need to run the race. In other words, never looking back. You don't look back in a race. You keep looking forward to the prize, which is God himself and Jesus. He is our reward. God is our reward. That's the thing that everybody don't understand. We keep thinking about heaven is our reward. Heaven is not our reward. It's a bonus. God is our reward. God is the love that we're striving for daily. Run the race, fight the good fight. When somebody comes to you, it means don't use evil for evil. Be good, even when they're not. Be kind, even when they're not. Be loving, even when they're not. There's a time, Ecclesiastes 3 talks about it. There's a time for everything, a season. But God says, just be good. Don't start nothing, so he don't have to finish it. I hope everybody has a blessed week. You know, if you like to leave a comment, just leave a comment. We love them all, no matter good or bad. Why? Because we know that if you're saying something, we know that if you're either good or bad, you know that God's talking to you. You have a blessed week. We love you.